G'day everyone, Craig here from Geek and Camo, and welcome to a brand new show that I'm calling What Am I Watching This Week? The idea is pretty simple. So I watch a lot of TV and movie every week, but not everything needs a full 20 or 30 minute review. So this is where I'm going to give you the quick version. What I watched, what I liked, and what I didn't like as well, and whether I think it's actually worth your time. So short, sharp, and hopefully under 10 minutes. This week I've got Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Stuart Fails to Save the Universe, Lioness, and the premiere of Lanterns, Spiderman Brand New Day, and for a bit of nostalgia, we went back to The Hunger Games. So let's get into it. All right, first up, Strange New Worlds, Season 4, Episode 4. And unfortunately, this was another missed step for me. You guys know that I love Star Trek, and I love Strange New Worlds when it's firing on all cylinders, but this season just hasn't really grabbed me yet. There are still things I like about the show. I like these characters, and I like the crew, and visually, Strange New Worlds is fantastic, right? It looks amazing, but I keep finishing episodes this season thinking, that was okay, but was that really the best story that they could have told? And that's pretty much where I landed again this week. It wasn't horrible, I'm not saying that, but it just didn't do much for me. All right, 4 episodes into the season now, and I'm really hoping we start getting some stronger episodes because I know how good this show can be. Like episode 1, it was excellent. All right, at the moment, though, I'm still waiting for season 4 to properly kick into gear. All right, next up, Stuart Fails to Save the Universe. I'm still having a lot of fun with this show. It's ridiculous, it's silly, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. And that's exactly why I like it. This isn't something that I'm watching because I want some incredibly deep story. I'm watching it because I want 20 minutes where I can sit down, switch off, and have a laugh. And episode 4 did just that. It's also just good seeing this corner of the Big Bang Theory universe again. I like Stuart as a character, I like the weirdness of the whole idea, and every week I'm curious to see what stupid situation they're going to throw him into next. It's not trying to reinvent television, it's just fun, and sometimes that's enough for me. Now, Lioness. And this continues to be one of the shows I'm most interested in every week. The story keeps moving, we're getting more information, we're getting more answers. But I've still got one big problem. I'm not convinced we've actually identified the real person behind Joe's abduction. All right, something doesn't feel right. We're obviously being led in a particular direction, and maybe the answer really is as simple as we're being shown. But I don't think it is. I think there's another layer to this. I think there's still somebody else involved, somebody further up the chain. And that's probably the biggest thing keeping me hooked at the moment. Who is actually behind all of this? Because I don't think we've got the full answer yet. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I don't know. But that's my theory right now. And I'll obviously go into that much more in my full Lioness episode review. Now let's talk about Lanterns, because this was probably my biggest surprise of the week. I thought the pilot was awesome. It really was. It was really good. I went into this hoping it wasn't just going to be another generic superhero show, and thankfully it wasn't. I really like the tone they've gone with. It feels grounded. It feels like there's a proper mystery developing, and most importantly, by the end of the episode, I wanted episode 2 immediately. Right, that's exactly what you want from a pilot. Introduce the world, introduce the characters, and give me enough answers to understand what's happening. And then leave me wanting more. And that's exactly what Lanterns did. I'm really interested to see how they develop this over the season, because if they can maintain what they've established in episode 1, I think this could be something pretty special. Right, it was a very, very strong start. Right, and stick around after the credits roll on the pilot because they have some more stuff after the credits that will be worth your time if you liked the episode. Right, then we have Spiderman Brand New Day. Right, and I'm just going to say it. I thought this was an excellent, excellent movie. I really did. Right, this may end up being one of my favorite entries in the entire Spider-Man universe. There's just something about this one that clicked for me. Right, and my 7-year-old, because I took him to see it as well. Right, it feels like Spider-Man. It feels like Peter Parker, and after everything that has happened previously, I think this is exactly the direction the character needed to go. I'm going to keep this very spoiler light because obviously people are still watching it, but I came out of this one extremely happy. All right, it gave me pretty much everything I wanted from a new Spider-Man movie, and I'll definitely be watching it again. All right, if you're a Spider-Man fan and you haven't seen Brand New Day yet, go and see it. All right, for me, this is easily one of the highlights of the week. Like I said, go see it. And finally, something a little older. This week we went back and watched the Hunger Games movies. And this is something else I wanted to do occasionally on this show. Not everything has to be brand new. Sometimes you just feel like going back to something that you haven't watched for years. And the Hunger Games was one of those for me. And you know what? They're still really entertaining movies. All right, you remember all the big moments. All right, Katniss, Peter, Haymitch, all right, President Snow, the games themselves. But when you haven't watched them for a long time, you forget a lot of the smaller stuff. So going back through them was actually really enjoyable. And there was a massive nostalgia factor as well. It reminded me just how huge The Hunger Games was when these movies originally came out. So definitely a good throwback this week. So if I had to rank what I watched this week, the biggest disappointment is unfortunately Star Trek Strange New Worlds again. All right, it wasn't terrible, just not where I think the show should be. All right, Stuart fails to save the universe, continues to be a good little laugh. Lioness is still keeping me guessing, and Lanterns had a fantastic start. And The Hunger Games was a great nostalgia hit. But the biggest thing I watched this week, I've got to give it to Spider-Man Brand New Day. All right, but only just. All right, because Lanterns wasn't far behind it. But that's what I'm watching this week, and now I want to know what you've been watching. All right, have you seen any of these? Do you agree with me about Strange New Worlds? Is it the Star Trek that we've wanted? All right, am I completely wrong about what's happening in Lioness? And what did you think of Lanterns and Spider-Man? All right, let me know down in the comments. And more importantly, if there's something good out there that I'm not watching, tell me, because I'll probably end up adding it to the list for next week. All right, if you like this new shorter format, hit the like button, hit subscribe, go to Geek and Camo, and I'll see you next week for another What Am I Watching This Week? All right, cheers, guys. See you then.